Okay, so guys, welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Tszyu versus Murtazaliev fight. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do need a like video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Tszyu is 24-1 with 17 KOs, and Murtazaliev is 22-0 with 16 KOs. This fight is for the IBF World Super Welterweight title. Tszyu's asphalt was a loss via split decision versus Fundora, and Murtazaliev's asphalt was a win via KO in round 7 versus Kulke. Murtazaliev is 6 foot and Tszyu is 5 foot 8.5. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I've said, this is the IBF title on the line. It's the title in which Murtazaliev managed to pick up last time out, and he's been somebody who's been around this weight division for a while and has never really his name's been mentioned, but he's never really actually been able to stake a claim for being able to get the big opportunities. And when you've had somebody like a Charlo, who was the former champion at this weight, he held up the belts a lot, and he really didn't want the division to keep moving. And he fought a few fights, but he kind of just inevitably waited for that big opportunity, which was the Canelo fight for him. And now that the belt became vacant, he definitely just straight away kind of moved in and just sapped up that opportunity to be first in line to get the opportunity to fight for the vacant belt. And I think he waited like 4 years or something like that for him to even get he's been in that mandatory position for like 4 years, and he just kind of sat about, waited, didn't realistically fight anybody of too big a note beforehand, was very much picking the opposition that was gonna, keep him in that position, mandatory, but was like the easiest fights for him to be able to take, and was, like I say, waiting and patiently waiting for the opportunity. And I think realistically, he probably didn't really want to fight Charlo. I mean, Charlo was in such great form and was doing so well when he was fighting. It would have been a very tough test for him to have beaten Charlo at that point. But he definitely benefited by waiting, and then obviously had that opportunity to fight Kulke, and Kulke was in a bad, kind of state in his career. Realistically, he was on the much latter part of his career, and he was still ranked highly, but there, realistically, wasn't really too much left for him to give. But he put up a very good display and really did go for the fight and was winning a lot of the earlier rounds and even the mid rounds. But you probably would have had him up on the scorecards, but then he seemed to fade away, seemed to fade off. Perhaps the age got to him and the kind of pace got to him, and he, like I say, slowed down, and that's when Murtazaliev was just able to pick it up as the younger man and was able to get that stoppage win, which was a nice stoppage win for him, and of course got him the belt. So it's what he's been waiting for so long, and now he's got this fight versus Tszyu, which is going to be a very, very tough test for him, and this is his first kind of big test in the super welterweight division, and I think he can't just wait around anymore, and he can't just pick and choose his opposition because he's going to get called for mandatories. And yeah, so now he kind of has to fight the big names, and this is, like I say, going to be a very tough test for him. Tszyu is coming into this most probably more fired up than ever, which is a scary thought, to be completely honest, because of the style in which Tszyu possesses, the power in which he has, and the aggression in which he has when he wants to. And he's coming off the loss of split decision versus Fundora, where, as everybody's been saying, he could have had the fight pulled into the third, the fourth round, and he didn't have to go all the way to the end of the fight. He didn't have to let the judges kind of decide. He could have just had it into a no contest, but he really wanted to push through, even if he probably couldn't even see with how bad the cut was. He really wanted to push through, and I show him a lot of respect for doing that. And yeah, inevitably, Fundora was perhaps able to be a bit too much, use that jab and be able to pick the shots, because Tszyu was struggling getting in and struggling to be able to see realistically, and was clearly getting affected by that. But now Fundora has seemingly gone off to go fight Spence Jr., and the talks of the rematch have faded a bit now, because it seems like Fundora is really trying to benefit upon this position in which he has been put in. And of course, Fundora was probably meant to fight Tszyu again, but then Tszyu obviously got told that he couldn't fight because of the head clash, and then also I believe he got told he was going to fight against Ortiz Jr. and that was announced on the Crawford Madrimov show, but then that also got pushed back because again, like I say, Tszyu was told that he wasn't able to fight because of how bad the cut was, and so it's going to be interesting to see if even that has an effect. If that is to perhaps open up again, then that could be a dreadful thing for Tszyu to have to deal with. That could really affect him, and it could be a long term thing. This cut, it was such a big cut and such a effective cut. These things perhaps might not heal in just a few months. So then after that, there was talks of him fighting, I believe, Lubin, which was one of the kind of high IBF ranked fighters and who has fought around high level, and perhaps not been quite as successful enough to be able to just push through, but has been a high level fighter for a long time and is on a relatively, I think, good run of form at the moment, or at least coming off a win. And then that seemed to fall through. So now we have this Murtazaliev fight. So, there was a few things that happened. I think Fedor, like I say, is definitely getting the success out of the position in which he's in. Obviously, he's been kind of granted the access to fight Spence Jr. next, and I think that's probably smart, to be completely honest. I mean, he probably could have gone on to fight Crawford and made a lot of money doing that. Perhaps it wouldn't have been the biggest name for Crawford, so I don't necessarily know if Crawford would have been too eager to make that fight. But same with kind of Canelo at the moment. There isn't really many options in which they can fight. I mean, Crawford realistically has these kind of lower level guys, but he seems like not lower level, but fighters who are champions around like at Ennis. But Ennis is fighting Chukadze, and Crawford wasn't too eager to go for that, and like the likes of Fundora, and then waiting to see if Tszyu wins this one. So I think he is just waiting at the moment and kind of looking around, seeing these big names, and then gonna decide from probably if Fundora fights Spence and Tszyu fights Murtazaliev, then he'll probably decide who he wants to go on to fight next. But like I say, he's kind of waiting around, sitting around to see what options he has available. Even Madrimov versus Bahachuk, he could fight the winner of that. But he's basically just waiting to see which name is the biggest name. So Fundora, I think getting Spence at this time in his career might be beneficial. Of course, he's coming off the big loss versus Crawford, and he's not fought since, and that was a little while ago now, and he did get beaten down quite badly in that fight. So we're going to have to wait and see how that's affected him. So Fundora could be getting Spence at a good time, and so perhaps him not getting the rematch versus Tszyu and waiting around a little bit may have benefited him into the long term. We'll have to wait and see. But this show in general is I believe, the first PBC Amazon Prime card that's free. Since Amazon Prime's come on to start airing these PBC shows, they have all been pay-per-view. They've been amazing events. They've been seemingly trying to match the Riyadh season type of level. I think they've seen how successful Riyadh season have been, and they've seen that they have got a good collection of fighters, PBC, and so they're really trying to push these big events and really trying to make each and every single one as big as possible. And the fact that they've got this main event on a free, the first free PBC Amazon Prime show, is kind of just flexing the names in which they do have available to them. They could have just waited for Tszyu to main event and then have a few other bigger names below, or Canelo to main event and then Tszyu to be below that. But they are, like I say, somewhat showing off the names in which they have by having Tszyu on a show like this. And there's some other big Australian names on it as well. I'm going to speak about one of the other matchups in just a moment, but I think it's nice to see. Obviously, Tszyu was meant to fight, like I say, Ortiz on that show, but he seemed to have a bit of a disagreement with His Excellency, and he said that if he's going over to Riyadh season, he's kind of selling his soul, which is, I mean, it's seemingly not what anybody else is realistically thinking, or bar maybe Canelo, but it's quite a big thing to say, and it probably does move away from any possibility of him working with His Excellency, but it's kind of fully putting in his trust in PBC, and it's seemingly so far paying off. And of course, he's getting put on these big main event shows, and like I say, bringing this Australian boxing over, which is realistically doing really well at the moment. I think the No Limits events in which they're putting on are high level events, and there are some big names coming through who are interesting and probably going to cause a bit of a disruption to the division and may have some success at world level. And Yeah, I think it's just nice to see. And I think Zhu had to work hard to be able to get out of Australia. He had to have perhaps a few more fights waiting around because of the likes of Charlo not really progressing on the division. It seemed like he was having a few extra fights in Australia, which really could have cost him and could have put him out of a position if he'd, suffered a bad loss or something like that against one of the lower level fighters. But, still good fighters, perhaps a little bit like gatekeeper, world level type fighters. But, now he's made it out of Australia. He seems like this is his time and this is his moment. And like I say, as well as this, he's moving away from his dad's shadow, and it's something in which is what a lot of fighters struggle with. I mean, you think even just Chris Eubank, Conor Benn, we saw them face off in the Beterbiev Bivol undercard, and that is made as big as it is because of the rivalry in which their dads have, and there's no kind of denying that that's where the branding for a lot of it comes from. But Zhu has now kind of seemingly progressed himself away from that of his father's footsteps, and his dad was an amazing fighter, but now he's, like I say, kind of creating his own path now. And if he is to win this fight, then he's a huge name in boxing currently. And like I say, he's moving away from his dad's footsteps, which is a really impressive thing, which a lot of fighters don't do. But to speak about another fight on this card, which I just wanted to speak about, Tapia versus Saavedra. I think that Tapia will win via TKO in round 8, but I think it's going to be an excellent contest. Like I say, it's really nice to see these high-level Australian fighters kind of be put on the map. I mean, Saavedra isn't Australian, but Tapia is, and Tapia is coming off some big, strong performances. He looks resilient. He looks like he's going to put on very entertaining displays every time that he's in the ring. He's aggressive with his work, and Saavedra is also aggressive with his work, and he's coming off a good win on an Australian show versus Isaac Hardman, which was a bit of a surprising one in the moment. But like I say, I think it's a good matchup, and it's going to be the makings for a good fight. Two styles in which I think are going to gel, but I think Tapia is going to be that stronger fighter who perhaps will be able to outwill Saavedra and won't just kind of cover up if he gets put under pressure. And yeah, I think he's going to be able to win, like I say, via stoppage. And it's just a little breakdown that I wanted to give for that fight. Going back to the main event, Tszyu as a fighter, of course, he's aggressive and he's proven that he's going to give his all in every single fight, which a lot of fighters have to prove. They have to show that they're willing to dig deep when necessary in these world title fights, these world title rounds as well. That's really what's going to kind of show. And the fact he was able to go the full distance with the cut, it shows that he is willing to give his all, and he's shown that he's worked very hard to get here, and he's never kind of out of a fight at the moment. And yeah, like I say, it shows that he's going to be putting everything on the line and giving the fans their money's worth. And so yeah, in general, I think it is going to be a very entertaining show. He's explosive. He's a front foot type fighter who's got great bodywork. Sometimes he doesn't utilise it as well as what I'd like him to, but even in that last fight versus Fundora, he seems to do it well. And yeah, I think he's got great bodywork, and we'll talk about more about how that might affect Murtazaliev in just a moment. He's accurate in his work, even if he has got that aggression. It's calculated aggression, and yeah, accurate. He's able to impose himself. He fights at a high tempo, typically at a high tempo, and he lets his hands go. He seems, like I say, more fired up than ever for this fight, so this could be destructive, Tszyu, to be completely honest, because, like I say, I don't think anything's going to get in his way for this fight. He punches through the guard a lot of the time, works angles well, has got good punch variation, a high guard. He's able to fight in the centre of the ring a lot of the time and be able to kind of move around the centre of the ring, even if he is in against bigger guys. And of course, he is in with a bigger guy versus Murtazaliev, and he didn't seem to struggle too much so with Fundora getting in range. Perhaps he was getting caught with a few more shots because he realised that he had to do that to be able to stay in range, but he's able to fight in the centre of the ring and be able to stand toe to toe even with the big guys. And when he throws in pairs, a lot of his work is excellent when he does that. Negatives about him, I think perhaps he may come into this one overly aggressive. I don't necessarily know if he's going to fight emotionally. I don't know if realistically that's his type of style, but perhaps he could come into this fight over aggressive, like really trying to put on a statement performance. I think he does square up a little bit at times. I think his hand speed isn't anything too crazy, and I don't believe his speed in general is anything too, like I say, wild. He walks onto shots, and like I say, his head can be on the line a bit at times, and he doesn't realistically respect your jab, but if you can get your jab going, you can land that and you can get consistent success with that. And it seemed like Fundora did that. Of course, everything that happened with the cut, you don't necessarily know how well Tszyu could even see, but it seemed like he was getting consistently caught with them longer shots like his jab. He stands and trades sometimes. He doesn't always necessarily move out of range. I think perhaps he forces the fight a little bit, forces the stoppage a bit, and he's not really wanting to go on the back foot at all. Murtazaliev as a fighter, he's a come forward type fighter a lot of the time, but he can fight on the back foot. I think he wants to be on the front foot, and if you look at the highlight reel moments of him, he's on the front foot, being aggressive, kind of letting his hands go on the ropes. But he is able to have good pull counters and have the kind of aggressive back foot work. He stands in front of you a lot of the time. He's got a solid chin, and I think that's definitely going to get tested versus Tszyu. He imposes himself as well, so it's going to be very intriguing to see if this is just going to end up into a bit of a firefight. He overpowers. He ups the pace when needed. Like I say, he did that in that last fight versus Cool K. Perhaps he wasn't having a lot of success, like I say, in them early rounds, but when the pace was needed to be upped, he did that. He was aggressive in his own right, lets his hands go, can fight on the back foot, like I say, aims to respond pretty much every time he does get hits, similar to that of Tszyu in that aspect, and he does punish when he gets you on the ropes. And negatives about him, I think, like I say, he's hurt to the body. That's something I wanted to mention. He's hurt to the body. I think that's where Cool K went to early and was able to really slow Murtazaliev down because he was getting him hurt to the body, and as the big target in which he's there, if he's struggling to Cool K's body shots, I think he's going to really struggle to Tszyu's body shots. He has sometimes a bit of a lack of defensive movement, like I say, has his head on the line a bit at times, kind of leans back when he's throwing punches and aims to pull counters, but sometimes he's just leaning back with his chin in the air. He does tire. I think perhaps he was tired. He upped the pace into the later rounds, but I think there were a few rounds against Cool K where he did look a bit tired. I don't necessarily know how good his athleticism is, and Tszyu is able to go all the rounds very well. He's got an open guard, Murtazaliev. He's open to counters. He's used to fighters typically just backing off against him, and like I say, because this is a step up, Tszyu's definitely not going to do that. His accuracy isn't always amazing, especially in close, and if Tszyu can get a bit of head movement going, then I think he's going to be able to have success getting in. He could perhaps be a bit over-eager, maintaining his range. I don't think he's excellent at doing that. And of course, like I say, he's not been very active as well, so I think there could be some real signs of ring rust in there. Tszyu is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Tszyu will win via TKO in round 6. I think he's going to be able to really break him down to the body and then be able to get past any sort of jab or any kind of long shots in which Murtazaliev might throw. Like I say, I think he does struggle to keep you at range and perhaps does want to fight on the inside. And if he's fighting on the inside toe-to-toe with Tszyu and the fired up Tszyu, in which, like I say, I really believe we're going to be getting into this fight, I think he's not going to have success, and I think Tszyu's going to win, like I say, via TKO in round 6. Perhaps a mean body shot or something like that could drop him. And I don't think Murtazaliev will be able to get back up. Then who could go on to fight Tszyu? Like I mentioned, there's some names available. Perhaps we might see the Ortiz Jr. fight still. I do kind of doubt it, to be completely honest now, but like I say, perhaps that could still be an option. Fundora versus Spence Jr., the winner of that, he might be waiting around a while for that fight to even be made. Of course, that hasn't even been announced yet, and because Tszyu had that little bit of time out due to his head clash, he might be eager to keep fights going, and if he doesn't get an injury after this one, he might want to be back fighting again come kind of early New Year type time, and so you might not want to be waiting around too long. Perhaps, like I say, Crawford, this fight could make sense for Crawford to want to give him this opportunity and want to give him this fight, and it's another belt, it's another reason for fighters to come and fight Tszyu, so that could be an option. Or of course, like I mentioned, Lubin could be another fight as well, highly ranked in the IBF, and so that could be another option. But like I said, I believe there are plenty of options available in this super welterweight division at the moment. But just who's going to be able to get to that big kind of name in Crawford, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I think Tszyu puts on a very good performance this weekend. But that's it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.